Well, let's try to get started with it. Okay. How's that? Look about right. All right. Tonight, though, we're covering Genesis 34. That's verses 1 through 31, which is the whole chapter. So we've got a chunk to we've bitten off here. Gotta have to chew it. Okay. Before we do that, we better ask for God to teach us, because that's what it takes. Lord and Father, we do come to you tonight, and we're looking into your word again. And Lord, it's important that we look at your word because it's your word, and it's your word, the way you communicate with us, the way you tell us things, the way that you made known your wishes in our lives. So we ask you to teach us that tonight. Use each other to show each other what it is that the text has to teach us. And we ask that in Christ's name. Okay. This is, I've got it broken up into 31 verses, so I've got it broken up into chunks. And we have about 5 chunks to read through here first. And I want to read through it. This is our text, so we need to know what it is. Before we start reading it, though, let's remember where we are. We should remember we're just outside Shechem, where Shechem is. And remember when they came down, when Jacob and his household came down, they went through Nahemaim first and then to Peniel, and that's all on the Jabbok, right? And then to Sukkoth. Nahemaim meant 2 camps. Peniel means feast of God. Sukkoth means booths. Remember we talked about that, kind of corrals. And then they ended up going on west to Shechem. And that's where they are. So let's read the first section, which is Genesis 34, 1 through, well, we're actually reading 1 through 31. So let's just, verse 1. Now, Dinah, the daughter of Leah, whom she had borne to Jacob, went out to see the daughters of the land. Then Shechem, the son of Hamor the Hivite, the prince of the land, saw her and took her and lay with her and violated her. And he was deeply attracted to Dinah, the daughter of Jacob, and he loved the young woman and spoke to the heart of the young woman. So Shechem spoke to his father Hamor, saying, "Get me this girl as a wife." Now Jacob heard that he had defiled Dinah his daughter, but his sons were with his livestock in the field, so Jacob kept silent until they came in. And Hamor the father of Shechem went out to Jacob to speak with him. Now the sons of Jacob came in from the field when they heard it, and the men were grieved, and they were very angry because he had done a disgraceful thing in Israel by lying with Jacob's daughter. For such a thing ought not to be done. Continuing in verse 8, but Hamor spoke with them, saying, "The soul of my son Shechem longs for your daughter. Please give her to him as a wife, and intermarry with us. Give your daughters to us, and take our daughters for yourselves. Thus you shall live with us, and the land shall be opened before you. Live and trade in it, and take possession of property in it." Verse 11, and Shechem also said to her father and to her brothers, "If I find favor in your sight, then I will give whatever you say to me. Ask me ever so much bridal payment and gift, and I will give according as you say to me, but give me the girl as a wife." Verse 13, but Jacob's sons answered Shechem and his father Hamor with deceit. And thus they spoke, because he had defiled Dinah their sister. And they said to them, "We cannot do this thing to give our sister to one who is uncircumcised, for that would be a reproach to us. Only on this condition will we consent to you, if you will become like us, in that every male among you be circumcised. Then we will give our daughters to you, and we will take your daughters for ourselves, and we will live with you and become one people. But if you will not listen to us to be circumcised, then we will take our daughter and go." Continuing on, verse 18, now their words seemed good in the sight of Hamor and Shechem, Hamor's son. So the young man did not delay to do the thing, because he was delighted with Jacob's daughter. Now he was more honored than all the household of his father. So Hamor and his son Shechem came to the gate of their city and spoke to the men of their city, saying, these men are peaceful with us. Therefore, let them live in the land and trade in it. For behold, the land is large enough for them. Let us take their daughters for us as wives and give our daughters to them. Only on this condition will the men consent to us to live with us, to become one people, that every male among us be circumcised as they are circumcised. Will not their livestock and what they acquire and all their cattle be ours? Only let us consent to them, and they will live with us. And all who went out of the gate of his city listened to Hamor and to his son Shechem, and every male was circumcised, all who went out of the gate of the city, gate of his city. We're on verse 25 now. Now it happened on the third day, when they were in pain, that two of Jacob's sons, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, each took his sword and came upon the unsuspecting city and killed every male. And they killed Hamor and his son Shechem with the edge of the sword, and took Dinah away from Shechem's house and went away. Jacob's sons came upon the slain and plundered the city, because they had defiled their sister. They took their flocks and their herds and their donkeys, and that which was in the city, and that which was in the field. And they captured and plundered all their wealth, and all their little ones and their wives, even all that was in the houses. Verse 30, then Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, you have brought trouble on me by making me odious among the inhabitants of the land, among the Canaanites and the Perizzites. And my men being few in number, they will gather together against me and strike me, and I will be destroyed, I and my household. But they said, should he treat our sister as a harlot? Wow. It's quite an event. A lot going on in it. We're looking now at the first two verses. We'll go back and look at them in detail. Now, Dinah, the daughter of Leah, whom she had borne to Jacob, went out to see the daughters of the land. I was in the right spot. No, it wasn't. I think I hit the touchpad again. Yeah, okay. Then Shechem, the son of Hamor the Hivite, the prince of the land, saw her and took her and lay with her and violated her. Dinah, the daughter, the only daughter we know of, we have a name anyway, and maybe the only daughter, don't really know. I kind of think probably not. But Dinah goes visiting to see the sights. Now, when you stop and think about this, we don't really know how long they've been there. We said they probably stayed at Succoth for a while, because they built a house there, not just put up their tents and camped there for a while. They built a house, and then they moved on to Shechem. So we don't know how long they've been at Shechem. We didn't know how long they stayed at Succoth. We do know that they stayed 20 years. Jacob stayed 20 years in Haran, right? And after that, they made the journey down here, down to this area, Mahanaim and Penuel and Sukkoth and Shechem. So the daughter's there. I don't know if she's been there for years or whatever. She's going to visit friends, but she's going out to visit, apparently, to see the sights. Okay. So she goes visiting, not suspecting, and apparently, or expecting to be in danger or peril or to be attacked in any way. She went out, apparently by herself. And when you look at it, it is an attack. It is an attack. Different commentators have different opinions. And matter of fact, you can get just about any opinion you want to out of this, where Shechem was doing the right thing, or the sons of Israel were doing the right thing, and blame in various areas. Well, there's plenty of blame to go around with just about everybody, but I mean, they're human beings, right? So that's kind of the way it works. But it is an attack, and we'll see why we think that, why I think that. I say there's enough differing opinion on this, and they're reasonable opinions. They're not, I just try to get from the text what it is it's telling us. Okay, this is what it's, well, I'll tell you what it's telling me. And if you have a different opinion, you can have that. Reasonable people can disagree on this, right? Especially when you're trying to discern, trying to determine, trying to figure out motivations. behind what people are thinking, saying, doing. So they're having different opinions, but it looks like she was forced. From all that's said afterward, and we're going to look at all that's said afterward, and why, and we will look at that, right? So Shechem was the prince. That's Shechem, the son of Hamor the Hivite. Shechem was the prince of the city or land, right? Now, this was a city, yes, call it a city, right? It wasn't New York City. It wasn't a gigantic city like we think of today. Oh, it's probably more like a village. But Hamor was the king, the ruler of it, and Shechem was the prince. His name was the same as the city. Apparently, it was hereditary, right? So Shechem's a prince. He's the number 2 guy in the whole thing, and he's apparently the crown prince. He's the guy that's supposed to inherit, right? So he's not just a person you say, no, get out of here, dude. All right. But in any case, what he did ought not to be done. He should have gone to Jacob and arranged a marriage, but he didn't. He took what he wanted. Any way you look at this, Shechem was in the wrong in this instance. Whatever the customs were, and we know what a lot of the customs were at the time, and just to go take her. And apparently, it seems to indicate with some force. And some commentators disagree on that too. Okay, so he took what he wanted. He's the prince. He'd take what he was a big shot, right? He's like a congressman or somebody in the executive branch today, right? Should have gone to anyway. He didn't. He took what he wanted. So he's in the wrong in this instance. So she's not very old in this instance. She was born after all of Leah's sons. They spent 20 years in Paddan Aram minus, Leah had 6 sons in a batch of 4 and a batch of 2. Remember that? And just for 6 sons and whatever daughters were intermixed in that to be born, you're looking at years, right? 5-6 years for that to happen. So by the time they've made the journey down here and everything, she may be 13, 16, possibly younger, maybe older. She may be up into her 20s. It depends on how long they stayed in Succoth and how long they've been outside Shechem. Okay, so she may be those ages. Remember, at 12 years old in Israel, this is later on, but in Israel, they've decided that you became of age, responsible for your own actions and everything. At 12, when you had the bar mitzvah and the bat mitzvah was for the ladies, bar mitzvah was for the male. And once you hit that age, you're held accountable for what you do. No kids courts, nothing like that. No juvenile detention or anything like that. You're an adult. Is she that age? I think she probably was at least that, but what I'm saying is a lot of people have different opinions on how old she is, and yeah, I've got an opinion too. Mid to late teens, or maybe early 20s. Which early 20s, when you consider that Jacob lives to be 180, early 20s is still a kid. Still a kid. Well, let's look at this is going back and remembering some of the things we just said. Here's in Genesis 30. We covered that a few weeks ago, maybe a few months ago, in verses 20 and 21. And it said, and Leah said, God has gifted me a good gift. This time my husband will honor me because I have borne him 6 sons. This is after the 6th son, so she named him Zebulun, right? And then the next verse after that, and this is all it says about Dinah. Afterwards she bore a daughter and named her Dinah. And yes, I did look it up in a Hebrew dictionary, and Dinah, it said in there, would be pronounced Dinah. Dinah. So you pronounce it whichever way you want. I'm used to, that looks like Dinah to me, because we have an English name now that says that. So, no, I'm just letting you know that they may have pronounced it a little different. But you know who we're talking about. And in Genesis 46, That's a little bit later on when they're listing the 70 that were in Egypt with Jacob. Okay, she's listed. She's listed. In verse 15, these are the sons of Leah, whom she bore to Jacob in Paddan Aram with his daughter Dinah. And all his sons and his daughters numbered 33. Now that's plural, but daughters, sons and daughters, and when you look at the list, they're not all direct sons. Some of them are grandsons or great grandsons. You have a son is just a descendant, a male descendant. A daughter is a female descendant. Makes sense? All right. So after Zebulun, we know she was born. We know what she was born after that. And it just mentions her here. And this is talking about the ones that went down to Egypt. I mean, it just gives her name. And I did a search through the scriptures, right? Looking for Dinah, the name. These are the only places that it occurs. This is what we know. This is it. So what happened to Dinah later on? Well, she went to Egypt. About all I can tell you. We don't know if she's married or what happens with her. It just mentions her. That's all we know. Now, verses 3 and 4, we're continuing on. And he, that's Shechem, was deeply attracted to Dinah, the daughter of Jacob, and he loved the young woman and spoke to the heart of the young woman. So Shechem spoke to his father Hamor, saying, give me this girl as a wife. Now, the text in verse 3 talks about Shechem and his feelings for Dinah, right? Oh, that word love, deeply attracted. The word is debach. Cleave, overtake, follow, hard, stick. Yeah, I'm sitting there going, okay, I guess it has a bunch of different meanings. Some of them not necessarily related to each other, but cleave or overtake. Loved, aha. To feel affection for. That's the word. And it means either sexually or otherwise. So this could just be talking about when it says he loved the young woman. Oh, could just be talking about lust. Could be. But he certainly becomes stuck on her, so keeps asking for her as a wife. And that phrasing is important. Come back to it several times. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Spoke to the heart, dabar, speak, labe, heart. Spoke to the heart. Apparently, he told her what at least he thought she wanted to hear. He would marry her. Or try to. And in verse 4, Shechem goes to his father, really urging him to talk to Jacob and get her for him as a wife. As we come back and we look at that, because we see that phrase several times, it always says as a wife. I went looking. I was specifically looking for as my wife anywhere in there. And he never said it. As a wife. So, one of several? One of many? Don't know. If he was the crown prince of the kingdom or whatever, then maybe he already had a harem. Who knows? All right. Verses 5 and 6. Now Jacob heard that he had defiled Dinah, his daughter, but his sons were with his livestock in the field. So Jacob kept silent until they came in. Then Hamor, the father of Shechem, went out to Jacob to speak with him. Jacob heard about it. Sons aren't there at the time, so he waits for them to come in. That seems a reasonable course of action. His sons have gotten, they're considerably older now. And matter of fact, it describes them in the text as men, right? Reasonable. He's looking for advice, apparently. He's going to hear what they have to say before he jumps on top of everything. That seems to be a reasonable thing to do. Get input from everybody. You don't have to do what people say if you're the king, but you do need to listen. Verse 6, so Hamor goes out to speak to Jacob. And I said it. Hamor, the father of Jacob, went out to Jacob to speak with him. We don't hear the results of that conversation. We don't know what it consisted of. But from here on out, Jacob takes a back seat to the negotiations. You don't hear him saying much of anything until we get to the very end. Right? I think we know what was said because of what Shechem and Hamor and the sons talk about. They go through the same conversation, right? Verse 7, now the sons of Jacob came in from the field when they heard it, and the men were grieved, he calls them men again, were grieved. They were very angry because he had done a disgraceful thing in Israel by lying with Jacob's daughter. For such a thing ought not to be done. Ought not to be done. Came in from the field. They're grieved. They're very angry. Shechem did a disgraceful thing, lying with Jacob's daughter. And you just get to the point at which, some things that occur, some really heinous acts that you hear about, whatever, you sit there and say, that just shouldn't happen. People shouldn't be doing that. That's just not it. Well, that's apparently the way they felt about this. These things should not be done. Should not be done. You think they're torqued? It sounds to me like they're angry. It says very angry, grieved. They're mad. Yeah, not bitten by a rabid dog. Angry. Angry man. Verse 8. So here's Hamar's proposal. But Hamor spoke with them, saying, the soul of my son Shechem longs for your daughter. Please give her to him as a wife. And intermarry with us. Give your daughters to us, and take our daughters for yourselves. Thus you shall live with us, and the land shall be open before you. Live and trade in it, and take possession of property in it. Now, remember Hamor speaking with the sons. That's what he's doing here. I think Jacob's already heard it, but we don't hear more from Jacob for a while. He asked for Dinah as a wife to Shechem. So even Hamor is thinking along the same lines. That when you say a wife instead of my wife or his wife, then you kind of leave the door open to multiple wives or concubines or whatever. But he says that he wants Dinah as a wife for Shechem. Intermarry with us, the land before you, live, trade, take property. There's not an apology in there anywhere. There's no admission of wrongdoing, just he'll pay. We're going to see that here in a minute. So verses 11 and 12. And Shechem also said to her father and to her brothers, if I find favor in your sight, then I will give whatever you say to me. Ask me ever so much bridal payment and gift, and I will give according as you say to me, but give me the girl as a wife. To me, that sounds like property. He's trying to buy her. But anyway, people differ on what their opinions are up here. And so no apology, no admission of guilt, no admission of any wrongdoing, just offers to pay. It's like somebody with a lot of money, they think money can pay for everything, but no. But our bridal price was normal. You did get a bridal price for when you surrendered your daughter to a man. And Shechem offers a large bridal price, right? However much you want. Just tell me. I mean, you've got to think you have a lot if you can just offer something open-ended. I don't care what it costs. Just give me that. I don't go buy a set of tires without asking how much they're going to cost. No, you got to know. But give me the girl as a wife. The word wife is Isha. It's the generic female human being. Give me the girl as wife, Isha. Verse 13. But Jacob's sons answered Shechem and his father Hamor with deceit. Now, before we continue reading, up to this point, Shechem is the one that was in the wrong. But here in verse 13, it says, and his father with Hamor with deceit, and thus they spoke because he had defiled Dinah with their sister, with deceit. Here in verse 13, the sons, not Jacob, the sons answer with deceit, intent to deceive, deceit. What Shechem did to their sister Dinah justified all of this in their minds. Apparently it did. It doesn't. Deceit is not a good thing. And apparently they need the deceit to accomplish what it is that they plan. And apparently they do plan because they have started this whole thing off with deceit. Telling a false story to get a certain response, and they intend to use that response to accomplish their own goals. Okay, we'll keep looking at that. In verses 14 and 15, we said they used deceit, okay? Verses 14 and 15, they used circumcision for what they had in mind. What's wrong with that? Besides it being deceit, besides it being a lie, and God said don't bear false witness. He still means it back then. That's the sign of the covenant. To me, they're totally disrespecting God in this. So God was quite lenient with them, everything that happened with them. The sign of the covenant is God's promises to the descendants of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, and they are important. Israel is important. This is where Israel came from, and they are part of Israel. They are Israel. And they use that to accomplish evil. This is the if part of the proposal, right? We said on your outline, it calls it if then else. That's kind of a programmer's algorithm, if then else. This is if, the if part. Verse 16, then. So this is the then part, right? Then we will give our daughters to you, and we will take your daughters for ourselves, and we will live with you and become one people. I don't think they have any intention of doing this. From what happens later on, I don't think they have any intention of it. But this is the then part of the conditional. We'll intermarry with you, live with you, be one people. When Israel goes into the land, when Israel is practicing circumcision, but you can take people from outside Israel and bring them into Israel. They will be circumcised. They get the sign of the covenant, just like everyone else. And God is not excluding the population of the earth from the blessings of Israel. He wasn't. They could join. And this is what they promised here. This is what they bartered. Actually, they lied away. Anyway, this doesn't fit with God's plan for Israel, so it's not going to happen. And it doesn't. Verse 17, but if you will not listen to us, this is the else, if then else. But if you will not listen to us to be circumcised, then we will take our daughter and go. Take our daughter and go. That's got to be talking about Dinah again. We'll take Dinah, because apparently Dinah stayed there with Shechem. She's back at the city of Shechem right now. Okay. We're up to verse 18. Now their words seemed good in the sight of Hamor and Shechem, Hamor's son. So the young man did not delay to do the thing because he was delighted with Jacob's daughter. Now he was more honored than all the household of his father. That's kind of an aside there. Now he was more honored than all the household of his father right there at the end. It's just talking about among the household, among the royal family, if you want to call it that, of Shechem, the one that was most respected, honored, is Shechem. Shechem was. But anyway, that's all sounded good to them. Shechem's eager about it. And they're going to the city. We'll talk about that when we get to the next one. Let's talk about it. Here, let's do that. Verse 20, so Hamor and his son Shechem came to the gate of their city and spoke to the men of their city, saying, these men are peaceful with us. Therefore, let them live in the land and trade in it, for behold, the land is large enough for them. Let us take their daughters for us as wives and give our daughters to them. So actually, they say it looks pretty good. He spoke to them. The men are peaceful. Let them live in the land. The land is large enough. Let us take their daughters for us as wives. That's kind of speaking to their self-interest, and give our daughters to them. They're going to intermarry. They're going to intermingle with them. And that's what Hamor and Shechem were talking to the men in Shechem about, right? So 22, verse 22, they have to explain the condition. There is conditional, right? Verse 22, only on this condition will the men consent to us to live with us, to become one people, that every male among us be circumcised as they are circumcised. Will not their livestock and what they acquire and all their cattle be ours? Only let us consent to them, and they will live with us. And all who went out of the gate of his city listened to Hamor and to his son Shechem, and every male was circumcised, all who went out of the gate of his city. So who got circumcised? All the males. What age were you supposed to be circumcised at? Yeah, 8 days. 8 days. So essentially every male in this city, unless there's somebody under 8 days old in there, they were circumcised. That's what it sounds like. I think that's what happened. Every male circumcised. And now that's pretty significant for a man. That's painful, okay? Especially if you wait until you're up in age to have that happen. So but he's appealing to their self-interest. Will not their livestock and what they acquire and all their cattle be ours? Look, all this wealth is coming towards us, and they're going to join. By ours, I think he means they'll be joining the city, and it will be part of the populace, and we're all going to prosper together. So is there a little bit of greed involved in this too? Probably a little bit. They're certainly seeing it in their own self-interest to be circumcised and to take in this rather large family with a lot of animals out there into their city. Right? The men listened, and every male was circumcised. Okay. 25. Now it happened on the 3rd day, when they were in pain. They're used to doing this. They know when the pain hits. This is their family. This is what they do, right? You know when the pain hits, and what it does to you as far as being able to operate, defend yourself, or whatever else. When they were in pain, that 2 of Jacob's sons, Simeon and Levi, think about that, Levi, Dinah's brothers, each took his sword and came upon the unsuspecting city and killed every male. A lot of pain. Incapacitates the men, and it says all males. Remember, all males were circumcised. All males. 6-year-old kids, 7-year-old kids, 8-year-old kids. They're all incapacitated. All of them. And this appears to be the plan all along. This is why they answered with deceit. Now, keep in mind that the other brothers, it doesn't mention them in all of this. The sin falling specifically on Simeon and Levi. Okay. Now, they were angry, and apparently they went along with it well enough they didn't stop them. But this appears to be the plan all along. So Simeon and Levi took their swords. They make a surprise attack on the city when they knew that men would not be able to defend themselves, and killed every male. It doesn't say every man. Killed every male. I don't know specifically what that means, and neither do every other, although people are arguing about it all the time, but essentially all the males of the city are killed by 2 men, Simeon and Levi. They go in there with their swords because the others are incapacitated. Now, that sounds like a huge job, but remember, this city isn't as big. We probably call it a village nowadays, but it was a city. Killed them all. Killed Hamor and Shechem and retrieved Dinah. Verse 20, it says in verse 26, and they killed Hamor and his son Shechem with the edge of the sword and took Dinah from Shechem's house and went away. So that's where she was, back at Shechem's house. And they took her and left. Read that first part again. Now it happened when they were in pain that two of Simon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, each took his sword and came upon the unsuspecting city and killed every male. Verses 27, 28, and 29. Verse 27, Jacob's sons came upon the slain and plundered the city because they had defiled their sister. They took their flocks and their herds and their donkeys and that which was in the city and that which was in the field. And they captured and plundered all their wealth and all their little ones and their wives, even all that was in the houses. They killed the men, plundered the city because they had defiled their sister. Not saying Dinah. They didn't even say Dinah, their sister. And when they're going through this, they're usually talking about their sister. They can't do that to my sister. We'll talk about that a little bit more. Shechem's the one that defiled their sister. Not Shechem and Hamor and every man in the city and the wives and the little children and all the animals. They took the flocks and the herds and the donkeys, all in the city and in the field. The city and the field. So inside the city and outside the city, all what we think of as the countryside. They took everything that they wanted. Not only that, they took the wives and the little ones, all that was in the houses. What do they mean by that? Took. Did they kill them? Did they enslave them? We know they took them. Probably would have been, they probably did kill some and enslave some. I can't tell you how many. They wiped out Shechem, destroyed it, killed the populace, took all the wealth, utterly destroyed the entire city and everyone in it. Before we cover this, that's not a reasonable response. When we get into the law of Moses, people think of the Old Testament admonition, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, as some kind of implacable hatred. You go after your vengeance, an eye for an eye. Don't let anything dissuade you. No mercy. No, people think of it that way. Certainly the secular world thinks of it that way. But if you go back, and I didn't put it up here as a reference, okay? But you go back and you look at that. And an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth was a limitation upon the vengeance that you can take up against somebody for doing what they did, whatever it was that they did. If they knocked out your tooth, you can't kill them. If they knocked out your tooth, you can take a tooth. If they put out your eye, you can't kill them. You take an eye for, that's a limitation. It doesn't say you have to do that. It's a maximum. It's all making sense. A life for a life. Not a guy's life and his wife's life and all of his friends' lives and all of his children's life and everybody else's life and anybody you can get to because of they killed one person. Dinah wasn't killed. You get the idea they kind of went overboard? They let their hearts rule, which is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Verse 30, then Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, you have brought trouble on me by making me odious among the inhabitants of the land, among the Canaanites and the Perizzites, and my men being few in number, they will gather together against me and strike me, and I will be destroyed, I and my household. Odious in the land. You're going to stink. They're going to be hated in the land. Jacob's few in number, especially compared to everybody that lives in that whole area. Not just talking about Shechem, but the cities surrounded, because Shechem's gone. But all the cities around it, Jacob's few, he fears destruction, and God not going to allow that. But Jacob knows that what Simeon and Levi did was so far beyond justice that it amounts to the murder of many. This is something that ought not to happen. And I had to put this up here, and I shifted colors to red, because that verse to me is kind of drenched in red, drenched in blood. But they said, this is their answer. This is what should he treat our sister as a harlot? It would sound better if should he treat Dinah as a harlot? No, our sister. The only thing they have to say, that's their only justification. Well, let's look at that a little bit more. That's that last verse. But they said, should he treat our sister? Our sister again. Their concern seems to be that their sister was treated meanly. Okay? And that smacks of pride. It sounds like pride just bubbling up out of them, and it spills over into bloodshed. It speaks of pride and a violent disposition, belligerence, not concern for Dinah. That's what it sounds like to me. I can't. We're trying to infer things from what it says here in the text. Okay, if you have a different view and it's a reasonable view, I can't say no. Let's look at one other reference before we go. What happened to Simeon and Levi over this? This is from chapter 49. This is where Jacob is blessing, prophesying about his sons, all of them. And we saw that on the results of this. We saw that on that chart that had all the sons of Jacob, all the sons of Israel, which are all the tribes of Israel, and what they're known for, and all this. And this is what their blessing was, what their blessing or curse. In this one, we're looking at chapter 49, verses 5 through 7. Simeon and Levi are brothers. Their swords are implements of violence. Let my soul not enter into their counsel. This is Jacob speaking. Let not my glory be united with their assembly, because in their anger they killed men, and in their self-will they hamstrung oxen. Cursed be their anger, for it is strong, and their wrath, for it is cruel. I will divide them amongst Jacob and scatter them in Israel. That's even looking back at that the orange phrase in their self-will, they hamstrung oxen. They didn't just go around and taking the animals or whatever. They injured the animals, hamstrung them so they wouldn't be useful for anything else and couldn't take care of themselves, and left them there, apparently. That's nothing but pure viciousness. In this whole thing, all of Jacob's curse, really, he's putting on them, is referring back to chapter 34 of Genesis, the incident with Dinah, the destruction of Shechem, and what Simeon and Levi did. And here is what they get. This is the recompense. This is the judgment against them for it. Jacob's prophecy as concerned his sons, Simeon and Levi addressed together. Now, this next part is a quote off of the Ligonier website, and I don't remember who wrote it, but anyway, it's a quote off of that website, and one of the commentators talking about it. He says, as expected, Jacob's words come true in the history of the nation of Israel. Simeon is the only tribe Moses does not bless in Deuteronomy 33. So it's affecting all his descendants, all of them. And he is given only a select number of cities in Judah's territory. So he only had a very small allocation of cities within Judah's territory. He didn't really have a separate territory set out for Simeon. Okay. And that's in Joshua 19, 1 through 9. We would have looked at it, but we've already gone long. I knew this is going to be a longer one, 31 verses. The tribe of Judah eventually absorbs the Simeonites, and they disappear from history. So the tribe of Simeon disappears, absorbed by Judah. Levi is also scattered throughout Israel. They have some cities, but never a real area of land for their own. Never. Remember, they're priests, so they got some cities, but they don't have this whole area where they can come. However, as priests, you should understand God is redeeming. God redeemed them to be his priests. So there's mercy on God's part right there for Levi. This whole thing has been an event, a recap, telling of an event that just should not have happened. It's not. Now it did. So it's not like they got away from God and he got out from under his thumb or something. No, this is part of his plan, just like everything is part of his plan. That didn't make it right. You're still always responsible for your actions. Remember how he brought Nineveh to publish, or not, Assyria to punish Israel, but then he brought Babylon up there to punish Assyria for doing what it is that he brought Assyria to Israel for. So he's God. His ways are far above ours that we can't begin to understand what it is that he does. But this is kind of what happens with men. All of us, they're not particularly, they're not the most heinous men who ever lived. Be hard pressed to figure out who that was. Don't let it get away from you, your temper. This is the way we respond. And our temper, our vengeance, it's not good vengeance. That's why our Lord said, vengeance is mine. I will repay. He'll take care of it. The question is, do you have enough faith in him to let him take care of it? Turn it over to him. That doesn't mean you don't defend your family if something happened to them, whatever, but don't take it on yourself to go after vengeance. We're built that way. We do things that way. So go to him and ask him to restrain you and take the sword away. Let's go to the Lord. Our Lord and our Father, we do thank you for this look into the things that happened in the past to Jacob's family. And thank you for showing the whole thing, and that you don't sugarcoat anything. What's said here is everything open and honest. So we thank you for that. Thank you for the times that we spend together, looking into your word and learning what it is you have for us. So take us each now. Let us not pursue vengeance, but let us be about our Father's business. For we ask it in Christ's name. Amen. Let me see. I got it here somewhere. questions about anything?